Welcome to the Korea Pro podcast. I'm your host, Jeongmin Kim, the editorial director of Korea Pro.
And I'm John Lee, the editor of Korea Pro.
Join us for a weekly 15-minute conversation as we dive into the most pressing stories shaping South Korea and dissect the most complicated ones for you.
From politics to culture, technology to society, we've got you covered. So stay ahead of the curve and never be sidelined again.
So get ready for a fresh perspective on South Korea's news. This is the Korea Pro podcast.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of the Korea Pro podcast. It is now January 2nd, Thursday, a little bit before 5 p.m. And there have been a lot of developments in South Korea over the past almost week now. We have another acting president, Choi Sang-mok, who was inaugurated on Friday, right after the previous acting president, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, was impeached when he refused to nominate or appoint constitutional court justices. But less than 2 days after Choi Sang-mok became the next acting president, South Korea witnessed a horrible airline crash that consumed the lives of 179 people. And so we have a lot of things to discuss, things that relates to the current political situation. And so, Jeongmin, could you take us away, please?
Choi Sang-mok is a technocrat, first of all. I wrote a comprehensive profile to show the resume that he held before he became the acting president. He spent most of his career handling finance and economic issues for the South Korean administration's multiple, ranging progressive and conservative administrations. He used to be, I think, first vice minister of finance under Park Geun-hye administration as well. He worked for the Lee Myung-bak administration. He also worked for the progressive presidents like Kim Dae-jung and Muan in the past as well. So like Han Duck-soo, his career as a bureaucrat spans decades, and he did not really handle any political or military security sort of profile before. So this comes at a time when he has to now handle the jurisdiction ranging everything basically from depreciating South Korean won and the military power vacuum right now because of all the investigations going on after the martial law and the crisis management after the horrible accident over the weekend. And the interesting thing is Choi, although has been a technocrat, he made a very surprise decision that actually I did not expect, and I don't think any parties expected that. Han Duck-soo's appointment, I don't think DP was expecting that Choi would appoint the Constitutional Court justices.
It took them almost an hour to respond.
Right, and it looked like Choi did this calculation to give the People Power Party, the ruling party, a bit of a concession by vetoing, like Han Duck-soo did, vetoing the First Lady investigation bill and the 내란특검법, the insurrection prosecution investigation bill. But at the same time, he appointed the justices that Han Duck-soo refused to do, citing principles constitutionally. But he did not appoint everybody. He appointed just one justice nominated by the progressives and one justice that was nominated by the conservatives. So apparently he aimed at something that looked more partial, but at the same time, in order to help the Constitutional Court fast forward with the proceedings when it comes to Yoon Suk-yeol impeachment. And now, because there are 8 on the bench, it's possible for the justices to, without controversy, proceed and also to rule.
This truncated appointment, it was a rather unexpected, but also quite a smart political move, especially for a novice. By appointing just those 2 justices and saying that he would not appoint a third until there was agreement between the ruling and the opposition parties. First, he gave a nod to the previous prime minister, who gave the same reason as to not appoint any of them. But that being said, as you pointed out, he also gave the ruling party what they wanted, which was a vetoing of those 2 bills. He gave the opposition party what they wanted, well, not all of it, by appointing 2 out of the 3 justices. And so by doing that, he got the ball rolling. But at the same time, he did so by making himself everyone's new piñata.
So he's the new enemy of everybody right now, which I believe was one of the reasons why it must have been a very difficult decision. The PPP hates Choi now for making a decision that they believe, and many of the presidential office aides who remain loyal to Yoon believe that it was outside his conventional jurisdiction as an acting president. But DP also apparently hate Choi for not appointing all of them. So they all need to grow up a little bit and take the negotiation, but they are not doing so right now.
It's the usual song and dance. they cannot appear to say, okay, this is a compromise that we are willing to accept, because they have their entrenched positions. They have to keep arguing for their positions, now publicly at least. Now, behind closed doors, God knows what they're saying. But at least in the public, they have not changed their stance, and they've just instead turned their ire toward Choi. Joon Ha, you've been paying attention to a lot of this as well. Could you take us away, please?
Yeah, so just after the Constitutional Court justices were affirmed, or two of them were affirmed by Choi, both the DP and the PPP, as you both mentioned, have come out in strong criticism of Choi, however, on different sides. So PPP has said that the appointment of the justices in general was unconstitutional by Choi, while the DP there are unconfirmed reports of the DP trying to push for Choi's impeachment as well.
But
However,
there are also reports that they are restraining it for now.
Yeah,
Because of the disaster.
Yeah, so there are still very much kind of party-to-party, tit-for-tat going on still at the moment, and also with Yoon's arrest warrant, which came out on December 31st.
That was also a major news.
Yes, so the CIO, the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials, they issued the first ever arrest warrant for a sitting president in South Korean constitutional history. It was issued by the Seoul Western District Court, taken up by the CIO. The 48-hour detention period has been authorized. It's set to expire on Monday, I believe, January 6th. And it follows President Yoon's refusal to respond to 3 successive summons, which was December 18th, Christmas Day, and the 29th.
Just for our listeners' benefit, while we're recording this, it is right now 4:50 p.m., and there's been a lot of speculation among South Korean media that if there is going to be an arrest, it will take place sometime today. They believe that it will take place sometime during the day, but so far it has not yet happened.
So by the time this episode is published, Yoon might have been arrested.
That could be true. However, the Presidential Security Service is still holding guard at the president's residence where Yoon is currently at.
Right, and they're saying that it's illicit, right? The warrant.
And also not just them, but also his rounds and rounds of his supporters who have come out in quite fervent fashion. There are reports of them hitting reporters from local media, confronting people from the other side, the opposition, that want Yoon's arrest.
Right, there's like protest versus protest going on, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And also, in another unprecedented thing, on January 1st, just yesterday, Yoon sent a letter to supporters who are gathered outside the presidential residence.
Yeah, I saw the photo of that. That was a weirdly worded letter. Can you walk us through it?
So he expressed gratitude for the supporters' efforts to, quote unquote, defend the Constitution and the nation's constitutional order. He acknowledged watching their actions via a YouTube live stream and vowed to fight alongside them against perceived anti-state threats to South Korea's sovereignty and security.
And while Joon Ha was explaining that, we are seeing breaking news that police started forcefully disbanding the Yoon supporters in front of the residence. It looks like something might be happening very soon.
Korea Pro, your gateway to expert South Korea intelligence. Korea Pro helps you stay on top of the most important issue of the day with a daily executive briefing every morning and a curated overview of Korean and international headlines. Get access to our analysts' comprehensive insights on South Korea's economy, politics, security and society. Keep track of upcoming events and developments with our Monday Week Ahead newsletter. If you need an overview of the week that was, stay updated with our weekly podcast. Korea Pro transforms complex information into actionable business intelligence for companies, policymakers and researchers covering the South Korea portfolio. Visit koreapro.org/podcast and never be sidelined again.
Okay, welcome back, listeners. Today is now Friday. We had to take a pause yesterday because of all the arrest moves that they tried to make at the presidential residence compound yesterday. It is now a little after 10 a.m. and Jeongmin was with us yesterday, but she was not able to join us today, so it's just me and Joon Ha. So before we begin, I'll just give you a quick rundown as to what happened today. At around 6 in the morning, the Corruption Investigation Office for High Officials prosecutors, the CIO prosecutors, left their compound to head to the presidential residence. They arrived there at around 7, and they had some trouble getting inside the residence. The gates were closed and they were being blockaded from entering by the Presidential Security Service. Now, eventually, over time, it is, like I said, it's about 10 a.m. right now. They were able to breach several of these defense perimeters that were set up by the Presidential Security Service. But they have reached the last threshold, which is the actual building itself where President Yoon resides. They have not been able to enter the building to arrest President Yoon because the Presidential Security Service, they are still guarding the president. Now, the CIO did hand over the warrants to the Presidential Security Service director, but the director refused this warrant, saying that it violated a law that I cannot remember what the name is at the moment, and we will get back to you on that shortly. But because of the impasse right now, the president is not yet arrested, and he is still within the residence. There are around 2,700 police officers outside, hundreds of protesters that are growing by the hour, who are all in support for the Yoon Suk-yeol, for the sitting president. And right now there is a big impasse, and it's a immovable force between an unstoppable object just meeting together at the same time right now. I might have gotten that phrase wrong. I apologize.
Yeah, so just to add on to that, so the investigation team, the CIO, 150 strong, they presented the arrest and search warrant to the PSS chief, the Presidential Security Service chief, Park Jong-jun, but he refused to comply. He was citing security laws, designated protection zones, and right now the 55th Security Battalion of the Capital Defense Command, the ROK Army, which was responsible for guarding the presidential residence's perimeter since 2022, is currently blocking access to the investigators, and also the investigators have quite the standoff with enforcing of the arrest warrant going on.
So regarding the arrest of President Yoon itself, we're not sure if it can happen today because of this impasse. Now, if it cannot happen today, then what happens is that over the weekend, there'll be even more pro-Yoon protesters gathering around the residence. For those of you who have been in Seoul, whenever there's a weekend or a public holiday, you've seen these massive conservative protests that are filled with pro-Yoon supporters. And they will likely make their beeline to the presidential residence, which means that the CIO prosecutors will have only until Monday to arrest President Yoon. And after Monday, they will have, if they again fail to arrest the president, they'll need to ask for an extension of the warrant to the court. But if this happens, we have to consider that there is no guarantee that a warrant will be extended. And there will also likely be a lot more political pressure from the ruling People Power Party. Things will get a lot murkier going forward if they fail to arrest him today. So now we need to talk about implications, Tuna.
Yeah, so first of all, the implications that we can see right now, I think we need to talk about the elephant in the room, where the CIO, the police, and their standoff with the Presidential Security Service, which is under constitutional responsibilities, and also the acting president Choi Sang-mok, who is in charge, or theoretically in charge of the...
No, he's not theoretically in charge. He is in charge.
Exactly. He is the acting commander-in-chief, and he has the authority to call off the standoff from the Presidential Security Service, and yet he has not said anything within the morning meeting that he just delivered.
Now, Choi Sang-mok did have a briefing at 8 o'clock in the morning, but he only talked about the need to investigate the plane crash that occurred in Muan International Airport over the weekend. He did not mention anything about this arrest. And so this brings us to a critical question about chain of command and who exactly is in charge. Who's issuing the orders? Who's listening to them? Who's not listening to them? What's going on here?
Yeah, and that's the thing that's left in total uncertainty. The experts that I've spoken to just this morning have told me that the main issue right now is that there is no authority that allows the Presidential Security Service to protect an impeached president. And also at the same fact, the Army's Capital Defense Command, the personnel that are currently in the presidential residence grounds,
military personnel,
they are also not given the authority, or they do not have the authority to remain on those grounds for an impeached head of state.
And yet here we are.
So The whole idea about the CIC being uncertain, that's something that's left for politically for our politicians to decide on what's the correct answer at this moment. Right now, the blaring answer that's correct, the legal answer, is that the acting president, Choi Sang-mok, he has the commander-in-chief responsibilities.
Now, we have to keep in mind that in 17 days, we are going to see a change in government in the United States. The Donald Trump administration, the second one, will be coming in. Now, if I were a Trump administration official whose name rhymes with Bowlby, I might be thinking, wait a minute, can we trust South Korea? And is the alliance ironclad, or should it even be ironclad? We've got to talk about all of these false flag operations that the defense ministry has been accused of. We've got to talk about the drones that the Ministry of Defense sent over to North Korea, allegedly. And we've got to talk about whether or not we know who even is in charge in South Korea at the moment. If I were a U.S. official and overseeing alliance management with South Korea, and I was looking at what's going on, I'd be thinking, is South Korea holding up its end of the alliance? Can it be trusted?
Well, I think that, first of all, there's two sides to this. So, first of all, we can say that South Korea can be commended for its, protection of its democratic institutions in the first few days of martial law, and also how rapidly the impeachment process has been going on. However, as you mentioned, the vacancy or alleged vacancy of the CIC, the commander-in-chief role, being uncertain, the continuous allegations that go on about President Yoon ordering military officials to look into sending a drone into Pyongyang, which was allegedly reported in Pyongyang state media of releasing propaganda leaflets into Pyongyang streets. These are military operations that probably weren't vocated with USFK, the U.S. Forces Korea, the UNC, the UN Command. These are things that the U.S. officials will be not very happy with, looking forward into their start of their next administration coming January 2016th?
January 20th, you mean?
Yes.
And so if we are looking at all of this and we are not sure who exactly is in charge, the chain of command is unclear, the commander-in-chief is being quiet about this, the only two words that really pop into my head when I see all of this are institutional rot. And this sort of thing doesn't happen overnight. It has festered for a long time, and we are now seeing this happen in real time. And this is going to cause a lot of concern for a lot of South Korea's partners, including the U.S. and including all of its trade partners. And none of this bodes well for South Korea. But because we do not know yet whether or not Yoon will be arrested, if we keep going, we'll be just continue to speculate. So we are going to quickly move on to the week ahead. Now, week ahead, as I just mentioned earlier, we are going to be looking at Monday. That's going to be the final day for this warrant's validity anyway. And we're going to have to keep an eye out on whether the CIO is going to ask for or will even be successful in asking for a warrant extension if they fail to arrest Yoon today, Friday. And also, we also have to mention that the Democratic Party's leader, Lee Jae-myung, is going to face his second trial for election violations. And this trial is set for January 23rd. Now, this trial is also moving quite quickly. Now, he was found guilty in the first trial, but he had a suspended sentence. Now, we are not quite sure how this second trial will find it. He filed for an appeal, which is why we're having a second trial. Now, if he's found guilty again, he can appeal yet once more to the Supreme Court. But now with all of this going on with Yoon and the impeachment and the arrest and Lee Jae-myung going on, both sides are now racing against the clock. But of course, one side trying to delay the trial, Yoon's trial, and one side is trying to expedite the trial as much as possible. But regardless of what happens, we're going to keep you updated. And all of this information will be sent to you by email on Monday by the Week Ahead newsletter. So if you'd like to know more, please subscribe. Have a good weekend, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why they matter every morning in your inboxes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for your weekly dose of insight. And until next time, I'm Jeongmin Kim.
And I'm John Lee. Stay connected, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on the Korea Pro Podcast.